Good evening. If you don't know, my name is Jim Hawk, and I am the Executive Director of Neighbor to Neighbor. I want to welcome you to our second session of the Neighborhood Passion Affinity Network. The purpose of the network is to bring together neighbors, community partners, and other stakeholders from across the metropolitan area around 8 key neighborhood passions: crime prevention and reduction, neighborhood beautification and the environment, neighborhood planning and development, making our government work for our neighborhoods, neighborhood preservation, community and diversity, caring for our neighbors, and effective neighborhood organizing. Tonight, we are focusing on our second passion, neighborhood beautification and the environment. Our topic is your neighborhood's tree canopy, benefits and action steps. Before we get started this evening, I just want to take a moment to really discover who's joined us. So in a moment, I'm going to ask each of you to just answer two simple questions. The first one is if you would share your name. And the second is if you would tell us what neighborhood you live in. And if you don't know what neighborhood you live in, it's okay just to say East Nashville or South Nashville or Antioch, just so we get a general idea of who is on the line. After you finish speaking, if you'll look around the room and see who hasn't spoke yet, and invite them to speak. We've had a couple people join us, so I just want to remind folks that automatically your cameras are off and you are muted to begin with, but if you want to unmute and you want to allow your video to be seen, those buttons are in the bottom left-hand corner. So I'll start and we'll go around the room and I'll point someone out. This is all, your name and the neighborhood you live in. So my name is Jim Hawk, and I live in historic Edgefield over in East Nashville. And since his camera's on, I'm going to invite Ron to introduce himself.
Am I unmuted? I guess
you're unmuted.
Yeah. Ron Hogan, and I'm in historic Germantown. And
welcome, Ron.
Well, thank you. Meg?
Thanks, Ron. My name is Meg Morgan. I live in the Oakland Acres neighborhood in Madison, and I will pass it to Kate.
Hi, I'm Kate Monahan, and I live in the College Hill neighborhood, which is part of Hadley Park, North Nashville. Tricia?
My name's Trish Romps, and I live in Caldwell Abbey Hall. Leanne.
Hi, I'm Leanne Stevenson, and I'm eating, which is why I'm not on camera. but I live in Sylvan Park.
Christopher, are you willing to share?
Yes, I'm Christopher Ryland. I live in Forest Hills.
Oh, great. Welcome. Good to see you all here tonight. Again, tonight's topic is your neighborhood's tree canopy, benefits, and action steps. As you all know, Nashville is experiencing a period of unprecedented growth with a 45% increase in population just between 2000 and 2017. This growth, we are told by Root Nashville, has led to the loss of trees throughout Davidson County. Trees not only keep Nashville beautiful, but they are a part of our city's critical infrastructure. As we grow, we must preserve our existing trees and plant new ones to maintain green and healthy city and neighborhoods we love. Meg Morgan is here tonight. She is with Root Nashville. Some of you may have already met Meg, as she's been an active participant in our own training and networking programs. Meg, welcome, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Jim, and thanks everybody else for being here tonight to talk trees. Definitely a subject close to my own heart, and it sounds like close to yours if you have signed up here tonight. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here in a moment. I'm just going to walk through a few slides with you all just to set up the conversation. It won't be too much, I promise, and then we can get right into talking more about these issues and answering any questions that you might have. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Everybody see that okay? All right, great. So I wanted to talk about the benefits of trees and then some action steps that you can take regarding our urban canopy. I like to start with the benefits because that's starting with the why, right? I think we maybe have an understanding, at least a little bit, about trees, you know, cleaning our air, and they're beautiful, but there are so many other reasons why trees are important, and there are so many other benefits that they bring to our neighborhoods. So kind of wanted to start with there and lay out just some of these benefits for you all. And the first category of benefits is related very directly to our own selves as people, and that is because the health of our urban tree canopy and the health of ourselves as Nashville citizens is really, really connected, believe it or not. So here's just some of the ways that trees can benefit our own public health. They have a really positive effect on air pollution and air quality, and that actually makes a direct impact on asthma and asthma rates. It is so much of an impact that this is actually a piece of data that we used with the Root Nashville campaign to help direct where we were going to plant trees. We looked at areas of Nashville that had higher rates of hospitalization due to asthma, and we're trying to get a lot more trees planted in those areas. But in addition to just the air quality, of course, trees also cool our neighborhoods, and that can really help prevent heat-related illness. So this map here in the middle is a map of average surface daytime temperatures in Nashville. And you can see that area right downtown where there's more impervious surfaces, more pavement, more concrete. It's actually significantly hotter than these outlying wooded areas. And that heat, again, is really directly related to our own health because there's a lot of health issues that relate to how hot it is. It's also a benefit in terms of mental health and in terms of physical activity and being outside. If you live in an area that has more trees, you're more likely to go outside, experience those mental health benefits in addition to physical benefits of just being outside more often. There's also some direct benefits that relate to your own neighborhoods and your own homes where you live. Increases your property value, can help you conserve energy. If you plant trees in the right place, you won't have to use as much air conditioning in the summer. And then again, you won't have to use as much heat in the winter because if planted in the right spot, then the sunshine will come through when those leaves fall. So you can time it just right to conserve energy both times of year. An unusual benefit of trees we actually talked about last week with a different neighborhood affinity group is actually traffic calming. This is kind of an interesting benefit that trees can bring. If you plant trees on the side of a road, kind of tree-lined area, can reduce traffic speeds by up to 8 miles per hour. And part of that is because maybe it's the mental health benefits of trees, it's just the calming effect, but it also kind of creates more of a tunnel vision and a narrower line of field. So in addition to all these other benefits that trees bring, can actually help people drive slower as well. And then in terms of lawn care and mowing, the more trees and the more landscaping and plants you have in your yard, the less mowing you have to do, the less you have to worry about watering and irrigation. So that's another benefit. But also, of course, because this is with neighbor to neighbor, there are plenty of social cohesion benefits of trees as well. Again, when it's a cool and comfortable and pleasant outdoor environment to be in, you're more likely to go outside. And there are studies that show that when that is the case, you're more likely to look across the way, chat with your neighbor, and develop some relationships those ways. So it's also kind of an interesting, maybe unknown or untalked about benefit of trees is that they can really help create a sense of community in your neighborhood. Of course, this is maybe the benefit of trees that people know the most about, and that is the ways it, of course, benefits the environment and it benefits our land. Through the process of both establishing roots, but also just the fact of their structure with their leaves and limbs. It actually slows down rain as it falls, helps soak up some of that extra storm water, so it can really help prevent flooding in certain areas. That's a big reason why Root Nashville is partnered with Metro Water Services, because they really recognize the stormwater benefits that trees provide. It's one of the cheapest and easiest things you can do to help prevent flooding, help prevent stormwater issues in your neighborhood. I know that's a big thing that a lot of neighborhood groups discuss. Helps with stream quality and water quality as well. This map with all this crazy squiggles on it is a map of from this tool called iCreek, and I can drop the link to that in the chat here in a moment, but you can see what's the closest stream to you and how healthy it is. And there's a really direct relationship to how healthy your nearby waterways are with the tree cover in that area. Helps prevent with soil erosion as well. So again, that helps keep our waterways clean, because the less soil and sediment that's being brought into our streams, the cleaner that they are. And that the air quality benefits we already talked about, of course, as well, but that's a way that we can directly benefit as people. The carbon sequestration benefits of trees too is definitely another important one that's probably related to all of these different categories as well. Has to do with our own health, with rising heat. Trees can help capture that carbon instead of releasing it back into the environment. And it's, again, in my opinion, a kind of cheap and beautiful way that we can fight climate change on a really local level in our neighborhoods. So those are, in a very brief nutshell, the benefits of trees. There's so many other interesting studies that if you want to, I can send you some links about. It's shown that even just seeing a tree out a window, if you're in a hospital, helps you recover faster. There are studies that show that if you have more trees on a playground at your school, student attention raises and better test scores result. So there are so many different kinds of benefits of trees. But this is exactly why the Root Nashville campaign exists. So I just want to very briefly tell you a little bit about this campaign and some ways that you all can directly get involved, some action steps you can take with Root Nashville or with other tree-related groups. And then we'll kind of open it back up to conversation if that sounds good. So what is Root Nashville? We are a public-private campaign to plant 500,000 trees in Nashville and Davidson County by 2050. So that the public-private piece, that means that it is kind of co-led by the Cumberland River Compact, which is a nonprofit, and Metro Nashville. So the Root Nashville campaign is a Metro initiative. It is something that our current mayoral administration has signed on to support. And this is a goal that everyone in the whole city is striving towards related to trees. We're at a little under 11,000 at the moment. Last time I checked, I think this count has actually gone up a little bit since I pulled this slide. So we are on our way. The campaign launched in October 2018. So we are entering our third planting season just now that it is October. So we're getting there. We still got a long ways to go, but we're always looking for planting sites. We're always looking for people in neighborhoods to work with. Something that helps me sleep at night with this big giant goal that we have is that it is not just the Cumberland River Compact, it's not just Metro Nashville, it's not just the campaign in general who is working towards this goal of 500,000 trees. It is the whole city all together. So if you plant a tree that falls within the requirements of the Root Nashville campaign, it all counts towards the goal. So you can log on to this online mapping software that the whole city uses called Tree Plotter through the Root Nashville website. And you can see where all those 10,600 and so trees are planted so far. And if you have planted a tree in your own yard, you can plant it, you can log that tree here using the software as well. And that means that all these other fabulous groups that are related to trees in Nashville, including the Cumberland River Compact, but also the Nashville Tree Foundation, the Tennessee Environmental Council, the Nashville Tree Conservation Corps, and others, and all of the different departments of Metro who are somehow related to trees, all of these trees count towards the goal. So if you and your neighborhood association were to organize a planting, got the trees on your own, we're happy to help you do that. And I can talk through how to do that, but all of these trees count towards that big goal. This really is a citywide campaign effort. So one kind of direct action step that you can take, and this is directly through the Root Nashville campaign, is a new program that we launched this year, and that's called the Neighborhood Planting Captain Program. So how this works is you apply to be a captain, and then if you are accepted into the program, you're awarded a certain number of trees based on your neighborhood and some other factors and the number of applications we get. But then you have that certain number of free trees to work with, and you recruit your neighbors to find brand new, loving new homes for these trees. They can choose what species they would like. We have a list of about 40 different species to choose from. And your job as a captain is to get out there, spread the word, gather the contact information and what species people are interested in. And then we try to make it as easy as possible from there. We deliver the trees directly to people's homes, and we help organize the planting day for your neighborhood. So that is one way to get involved, is to become a neighborhood planting captain. The first round that we had, we're starting planting with right now in this current planting season, and applications will open up again here pretty shortly, and that's for private property, but we're also going to open up a right-of-way public property option as well. If you are interested in kind of the advocacy side of things, I would highly recommend being in touch with your council member and with your beautification commissioner. With the Root Nashville campaign, we're talking about getting new trees in the ground, but some of our partners are more involved on the preventing trees from being taken down side. And we can talk through that as well if anyone's interested in that. If you're planting new trees, get them counted in Tree Plotter. That helps for tracking purposes, but you can also add your neighborhood as a program name in the software so everyone can see how well your neighborhood is doing with the campaign and getting new trees planted. Got lots of volunteer planting events coming up if you want to get out, get your hands dirty, meet people, talk to people in your neighborhood. And you can also, of course, if you're interested in getting more trees planted, help fundraise to cover the cost of those trees. So that was kind of a whirlwind summary here of benefits of trees, as well as some action steps you can take. So I will pause sharing my screen here, and happy to open it up to any questions or comments.
Meg, I have one question. What is the current canopy cover of Nashville, or approximately is it?
That's a great question. So studies show that you need about a 50% canopy coverage to be a healthy city, to have healthy communities. Within the past 10 years, it's estimated that we lose about 9,000 trees every year due to development, due to old age. We lost so many due to the tornado and due to the storms following that. It's estimated, and this is not, we haven't had an official urban canopy assessment study lately, but it's estimated that we're at about 23 or 24% right now. And that's, he's talking about, okay, it's a measure from the air of how much of the land is covered by the tree, right? Looking at how widespread the tree is. And that's a canopy cover assessment is kind of technically what that's called. But yeah, so we're definitely behind, and part of the reason the campaign started is because we're actually behind cities of comparable size as well to Nashville. And some of that is, much of that is due to our growth, which is, really helped us thrive as a city, but it also means that there's a lot of trees being removed that would have maybe otherwise stayed and lived their long, full life.
You got to unmute, Kate.
How does planting trees at your own home affect the air quality at your house?
Mm-hmm.
Or are trees part of a cumulative effect where you have to go?
Yeah, it's definitely, it's more of a cumulative effect. I don't know if it's hard to measure and pinpoint, like do a control, so to speak, like we're only measuring the air right here instead of, in a broader area. That's a really good question. But I know that, there are studies even about houseplants in your own home helping purify and filter the air. So I would imagine that you'd want to bring those benefits as close as you can to your house. But the studies I know are more of a kind of broader look at air quality.
That would be a really good metric. I mean, it's a way to
Mm-hmm.
encourage people to do something that affects them personally, as well as part of this bigger society.
Definitely. And I know those studies about asthma rates, that was especially in asthma rates in young children, and that was on a neighborhood level. So it wasn't on a individual home level, but it was, okay, let's measure what the current rates of asthma are. Let's do a big planting, come back a certain amount of time later, and judging that's hopefully the only factor and effect here, what are the rates of asthma now? And they showed that it was the trees that helped improve that, and that was from a neighborhood level. But it would be good to know.
Any kind of information like that would be really helpful, and plant trees, because then you understand how it affects them personally.
Right. I like that.
Thank you.
I have another question, Meg. Are there a priority, or is there a range or a list of trees in priority of benefits to the atmosphere in terms of, I know a female ginkgo tree that drops all these things that smell like vomit, doesn't help it may help the atmosphere a lot, but not the local. But are there other trees, I mean, in terms of like pine, oak, maple, pine, that are better for the environment, or does it make a difference?
That's a good question. There are some kind of very small gradients within that, but kind of it will kind of balance depending on what benefit you're talking about. So if a deciduous tree is better with the air filtering and the air quality, but maybe that doesn't capture as much carbon as an evergreen or as a pine would, but it is, there might be some very small differences in those, but for the most part, just trees. and across the board, they kind of bring all of those benefits with very small variants of difference. But yeah, that's a good question. Most trees are good. I was going to say all trees, but you're right. There's some like these female ginkgos that can cause some problems. We personally aren't planting any hackberry trees, and we're not planting any ash trees as well, because the emerald ash borer, this pesky little invasive beetle that is already here in Nashville, it's guaranteed that it's going to kill 100% of our ash trees, which is very sad. This beautiful native tree here in our city, and it's estimated we have 1.6 million ash trees. So it's just another reason that it's so important to continue to plant and replant. That makes me want to reconsider the Root Nashville goal of planting 500,000, right? Because if we're losing 9,000 just to development and old age, and then we're going to lose 1.6 million to this emerald ash borer, we gotta at least keep pace with this to try to have a net canopy coverage here, instead of keep pace with that and hopefully also add more. So anyway, trees are good with a few exceptions, species wise.
Do large shrubs have any benefit?
Yeah, totally.
So what size does something have to be to approach what a tree does?
Yeah, so that's a good question too. So even if you're planting, so we go 1-inch caliper or larger is kind of the qualification for what counts towards the Root Nashville goal, and that means trees that are about 1 inch in diameter at about your shoulder height. So those are trees that are already pretty sizable, but that's more because of survivability reasons than because of the benefits. Of course, it has that benefit of making an instant transformation when you're planting a tree at that size, but in terms of ecosystem services and biodiversity and wildlife, even if you plant a little seedling, you can sometimes see the host caterpillar or the particular insects and bugs that like that kind of tree within just a year or two. So even if it's not maybe purifying the air as strongly as a larger tree, for us, even those little ones provide environmental services like pretty much right away when you plant them. Yeah.
I was thinking of things that are not defined as a tree. They're shrubs, they're plants, they're bushes, or whatever. But some of them get to be quite large. Rhododendrons can get very big. Tree side. Nothing's popping into my mind right now, but there are things that are big. I have yews that are just gigantic bushes that have to be trimmed back. So do those things do the same thing? I mean, or has it got to be a tree for some reason?
On a smaller scale, they absolutely do the same thing. They don't have quite the root system, which doesn't help, as
Okay.
much, with preventing flooding and the soil erosion and those kind of benefits. But, it absolutely helps with the mental health. I think at
Yeah.
least a little bit,
Right.
and those kind of health benefits just on a smaller scale. And in shrubs, but also with trees and other plants, we definitely recommend to go native as often as possible. There's a ton of different benefits for that as well. And this is kind of a controversial subject sometimes in the tree world because there's, oh, you all are meeting my cat here. Sorry about that. There's sometimes in really urban areas, native trees or trees that were native for a long time don't maybe always do as well because they're not as hardy. And with our climate changing, maybe trees that were native for a really long time might not be considered native anymore. So there's this other term that's climate adapted trees, and we do plant some climate adapted trees or native adaptive trees, and that's trees that historically don't grow here but do really well in urban areas. So anyway, all of this to say, kind of in this conversation about like shrubs and plants and trees, if you can go native as often as possible, and sometimes you do need to make an exception, which is totally okay, you can really see quite quickly the benefits environmentally to that. Even if you have a very small patch of wildflowers that are native, you'll see butterflies within your first year. Like it happens so quickly. And I was just listening to this webinar really recently. I was talking about how, within the last 50 years, we're seeing, I think it's a 2/3, it's a really shockingly large number, but 2/3 of our insect population is gone in the past 50 years. And that's, the bottom of the food chain in so many different ways. Oh, that means, now we're seeing there's about 1/3 fewer birds than we used to have 20 years ago. What kind of effect is that going to have on, and it just kind of, blossoms into this larger issue and problem. So anyway, if you can plant native when you can, even if it is a smaller plant, even if it is wildflowers or shrubs or even trees, that pretty much right away does have that environmental benefit, and you can kind of grow into some of these other benefits for people as well.
So Meg,
Mhm.
I've bought ordered 4 trees that I'm going to be planting this year
Uh-huh.
in our yard. And this tree plotting thing, you said if you qualify. So what does that mean? Am I going to be able to plot 4 trees, or is there some other requirement?
How big are they?
I think they're coming in at 5 feet or 6 feet.
Okay, yeah. So the specification is, and thanks for asking that, Jim. So it's 1-inch caliper or larger. So trees that are that kind of inch diameter and about shoulder height or larger, or smaller trees that survive their first year. So if it's smaller than that, we still, there's still so many benefits of planting trees of that size, but it's typically, it requires a little bit more babying or a little bit more care than a tree that's a little bit bigger. So that's why we say it doesn't count until it survived the first year. We could knock out our 500,000 tree goal tomorrow, if we planted seedlings and if we did smaller trees. But I call those deer treats because they just go so quickly, and it's harder to keep those smaller trees alive. When you're planting a tree that's 1-inch caliper or larger, it's a little bit more likely that it can stay alive if you water it very regularly over the summer. So Jim, it sounds like if your trees are about 5 feet or taller, that sounds like about 1-inch caliper to me. So absolutely create a login. I'll share, let me put it in the chat right now while we're getting to this next question here. We have a how-to video of how to add your trees to Tree Plotter and a little blog post as well. So we definitely encourage you to do that. You can find your little dot, your little 4 dots exactly on your neighborhood. You can zoom in and see it and then know that you're kind of part of this citywide movement too.
And Meg, I had a question come in. Some of our cherry trees need to be replaced and would like to add more along Murphy and or 46. We're just not sure how to ID those that need to be replaced and who to reach out to for help replacing, planting new ones.
It was me.
Oh, Leanne, hello.
Hey, Leanne.
And I tried to apparently I have blocked access to my camera because I hate to be on camera. But yes, here in Sylvan Park, we have a bunch that are planted along Murphy and then down onto 46th. And of course, this time of year, you can't really tell which ones are healthy and which aren't. But in the spring, you can tell the ones that, you know, they're about on their last leg. And I know those only last about 15 to 20 years or so. And I think these were some of the first ones that were planted. So what we would like to do is figure out which ones need to be replaced and take care of that first. But then we would also like to think about getting them planted further down 46th. But we're not sure about right-of-ways, like how far away from the street does it need to be, and then who takes care of it out there on the street, you know. So we're just trying to, I had been talking to a guy at Metro Parks, and he was like, oh, I'm happy to help you with that. And then, you know, he kind of fell off the radar there. So I thought, well, let me try this and see if we can get some info here.
Yeah. Thanks for asking that, Leanne. Thanks for bringing it up. I will say too, I know Metro Parks is super short staffed right now, so they're an incredible team, but yeah, they're feeling the burn for sure, and they do so much. So yeah, you're thinking along the right train here about like, okay, are these trees in the right of way or not? Because that will depend on, you know, who owns them or who takes care of them. It sounds like these are street trees to me. If they're along the roadway, it sounds like that would fall into the right of way. The definition of right of way is very gray. It's not hard and fast, like what is that? Typically, it's the area from the road to where your water meter is in your front yard. And that would include the sidewalk. That would include this kind of, you know, front maybe 6 feet or so in many places of your yard. But then that is also along streets. And it sounds like these street trees are that way. Kind of in the public realm, if they're next to a sidewalk, those are definitely right-of-way trees. I say that, it all depends. It's very gray, but for the most part, that does sound like they're right-of-way trees. So that would technically fall under Metro's umbrella. So the person that you would probably want to talk to, and I'm happy to help you make that connection, Leanne, is with our Metro arborist, who is pretty new. He just started during the pandemic, but is fabulous, retired from the Forest Service in Georgia, and we're really lucky to have him now here in Nashville. But he's kind of in charge of this kind of right-of-way area, as well as Metro Public Works. We have a horticulturist at Metro Public Works, who works in that area, and they can help you kind of decide which ones are, you know, hold on to these trees are pretty resilient, let's watch these, or no, these trees are totally dead and need to go, and Metro should cover the cost for removing those trees. And then in terms of replacing them, there is a tree bank that is with Metro Nashville that is a fund of money that developers are supposed to pay a certain amount into if they do not plant a certain number of trees, or if it's not possible, they then have to pay into this tree bank, and it is then used for plantings in areas like it sounds like you're talking about, Leanne, like along this right of way. So anyway, I will put my email here in the chat, and I would be happy to help connect you to those right people to get that going. In terms of who takes care of it, that is definitely a gray area as well.
I know there's a lot of gray. Well, and that's our other thing. It's like even down along 46th, in some places we don't have sidewalks right now. And I'm like, we need to know where to plant them. So if they ever do, probably not in my lifetime, come along and put in sidewalks, we want to make sure that then we don't end up losing our trees again. So there we go.
Yeah, so there are some kind of devices or water bags that can be used to help take care of trees in that kind of area. But through a tree care program that we have with Root Nashville and with the Cumberland River Compact, we water trees that are like that, like in the public right of way or on public property, like places like parks and schools, places that have overstretched maintenance crews that can't always get to them, and sometimes that would be a barrier for planting new trees. So we launched our own watering and maintenance program to help overcome that barrier. And we are, gosh, it's probably close to 1,000 trees over the summer. Watering season just ended, but we were contracted with Metro to water about 1,000 trees on public property over the summer. And they cover the cost of watering, and we take care of it with our crews. So that is something we could talk about in collaboration with those two folks at Public Works and with our arborist too, who takes care of them. It could be us, is the long story short.
And there's one other total, this is not representing SPNA. This is just for me personally. When you mentioned that trees slow down the runoff from rain, I can vouch for that because my neighbors across the street, the houses are up on a hill, and here I am down in flat rain. This summer during the pandemic, while we're all working from home, they decided to take down like 6 trees along their driveway, and they were huge trees. So now guess whose yard floods when it rains? So when that happens, I would love to say, hey, y'all could get some free small little trees and plant here, because she was like, well, I was just worried about them falling on my house, which I can relate to. I've had that happen. So, but what could you recommend to somebody? It's like, I don't want like something that's going to get as big as a tulip poplar or a great big maple, but something that they could plant that wouldn't damage their house, but would help slow down the rain and prevent some flooding.
Yeah, that's a really interesting kind of case study there in your anecdote. There's definitely some understory trees that can do a lot of good in preventing that flooding and preventing the stormwater issues. So things like dogwoods, things like cherries that we've been talking about. Crabapple are really good native species. Then you have to deal with the crabapple, whether you're a squirrel person or not. You know, that could be up to them. They maybe are not if they've removed some big trees. But something smaller and understory would definitely still help with that that flooding and that stormwater. And that is something, if there is a neighborhood planting captain nearby in the area, you might make a great one, Leanne.
I know, I was just thinking it was like I may designate myself the planting captain.
Yeah, no, it's we'll have another round of applications open in probably November-ish. If you want to sign up for our newsletter and keep an eye on our social media and those kinds of things, then you can see the deadline for when that next application will open up. But it'll be within this planting season, so we'll get them planted in early 2021 most likely. But it's also something, if it didn't work out on more of a neighborhood level or more of an organizing level, there are ways to get trees throughout several of our partners as well, including the Nashville Tree Conservation Corps. They do a tree sale. So the trees are not for free, they are delivered, but you do plant them yourselves, but they have a ton of different options to choose from as well. So if it turned out that, just some individuals wanted some trees, that's a really good option to go through. And again, like for us, we, don't really care how or who you get your tree from, as long as you get more trees and they all count towards the Root Nashville goal as a city. So there's other avenues to go through as well. The Nashville Tree Foundation does a tree giveaway of 3-gallon trees. So that's trees that are in a container about this big. So they're not saplings, but they're not 1-inch caliber either. They're kind of in between. And they have another giveaway this Saturday, I believe, on the 3rd. So that's kind of another way to get free trees. 2 more? Oh, good. 2 on Saturday. Good. Yeah. So there are different resources to get some free ones. But yeah, they might want something smaller and understory, it sounds like.
I am mindful of our time commitment. We have room for one more question. Does anybody have one that they'd like to ask? Oh, there's Trish. She's got her hand up.
I'm curious about whether or not there are limitations about what type of trees are planted in the right of way where there are sidewalks to prevent damage to the sidewalks.
Yes, there definitely are. And actually in council, gosh, within this calendar year, I want to say it was over the summer, there was an ordinance passed recently about street trees and sidewalks. So it's making the sidewalk rule a little bit more stringent. I think putting a little bit more teeth into that, requiring sidewalks more often, or following up on it more often, hopefully. But that also that trees are now required when sidewalks are put in. And there's going to be a list released very soon of what the specifications are for that. It's most likely going to be, you're exactly right, kind of like smaller, more understory trees, or trees that do really well in urban settings, because it's going to be, you know, pavement on both sides, trees that can be pruned up really nicely to keep those sight lines open. That's a safety issue as well, for sure. But those specifications are kind of soon to be hot off the presses from council.
Okay, great.
Meg, thank you. Thanks for taking time tonight. And thanks to everyone who participated in tonight's session. I do want to let you know that we will be sending you an email tomorrow, just inviting you to complete a quick survey, a one-question survey, just to give us suggestions for how we can improve this, or if you have a topic you'd like us to cover. The next Beautification and Environment Passion Circle meeting will be on December 3rd. But next week, we'll be back to focus on neighborhood planning and development. And Richard Audette, who is the immediate past president of Historic Germantown Neighborhood Association, will be here to discuss the topic, communicating expectations to developers. And he's going to be going over Historic Germantown's Good Neighbor program and how that's impacting communication with developers. So I hope you'll join us for that as well. Videos from this session will be available on our website, as well as YouTube and Vimeo in a few weeks. We mostly have volunteers here, and so we don't get things like the videos done as quickly as possible. We get them done as quickly as possible, but it's not an instantaneous thing. Finally, I just want to put in here real quickly, I shared with you the link for registration for next week's topic, and also my email address and Valerie's email address. Valerie is out sick this week, but I'm here, and if you have anything that you'd like to share with us, any suggestions or ideas, always feel free to use those email addresses to contact us. Thank you for being here. We'll look forward to seeing you all again. Again, thanks, Meg. Have a good night, and as I like to say, keep the neighborhood passion strong.
Love it. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.